In this video presentation, I want to spend just a few minutes to go over how to create and manage some contracts and purchase orders, what we refer to as commitments. So here we are looking at our Canyon State Gymnasium project. And before we actually go into create a new subcontract or purchase order, we need to discuss a little bit about the settings. So if we go down here to the bottom of this job, we can click on the settings tab and we can scroll down here to the bottom and we can see that there's a section here for project approvals and retention. And we can determine inside of this job whether we want to track approvals for our purchase orders and subcontracts and who that approver will be. I'm going to go ahead and leave this on for this particular job, and we'll leave the default to track subcontract retention, and the default percentage is 10%. And you'll see how that affects what we're going to do later on here. So I'm going to hit save here. So there's a couple of different ways that we can actually create a subcontract or a purchase order. Again, down here in the tabs at the bottom, we have a tab for commitments. And if you look, we can have our subcontracts and our purchase orders that are related to this job are all visible right here. If we were to click edit at the top, we can simply come in here and add a new item, and that will allow us to create a new subcontract for this job. Also, the same thing applies for a purchase order. The other way that we can do it is through our budget and cost analysis. So as we're looking through our budget items right here, for example, if I wanted to create a subcontract for all of the painting items, I could simply search for the painting items. I can see here's my exterior and interior labor and material. I'll select those items right there, click action, and create a commitment. I can select the trade allows me to filter through all of my subcontractors. I'm going to actually go through and I'm going to pick one of these, streamline painting, for example, and then I can decide whether I want to select a subcontract or an RFQ, which is actually a purchase order. And then I would just hit the create RFQ button and it would go through and it would automatically generate that subcontract or that purchase order depending on what we have set up here. The third way is actually through the accounting menu up at the top. If we click on it and come down to our commitments, we can see that we can view and create purchase orders and subcontracts. I'll actually go through the process here. Here you can see a listing. Again, using the filter tools, I can remove the jobs and see a listing of all of my commitments, all my subcontracts right here. You can see that some of them have different colors depending on what their status is. I'm going to go through and create a new one here. So I'm going to call this painting, and this is a new subcontract for our Canyon State Gymnasium job. Now watch when I select this here, we can see that because we had the approved by turned on and Brant Wadsworth was the approver, here's our retention for a subcontract. All of those defaults from the job come in here. Then I can go through and I can select the vendor. We're going to put Painting Arizona. And we'll select that vendor there. Now we have the ability to go through and add in all of the different line items that we would like to have show up. It could just be a single line item, a lump sum, or it could be multiple schedule of values for this subcontract. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to add in some of these items. You can see that as I start to type, it's showing a listing of the cost codes and the analytic accounts that are on this particular job. So there's my labor. If I'm using a category, I could put in the category here. We're actually using it right in the analytic account, so we won't do that there. And then we can go to our unit price. And I'm going to go through and just fill out this subcontract, and we'll speed it up. Great. Now we have all of the line items here for this subcontract. And if we take a look down here, we can see that We're tracking the retention percentage for each one of these. We can manually adjust every one of these independently. Here's the default value that came in from the job, and that's going to feed into each one of these line items respectively. We're tracking the retention amount that we're going to withhold for each one of these line items and the subtotal. So we have our subcontract total. Right from this, we'll be able to track invoices that we have received, invoices that we have paid, remaining left on this commitment to invoice, and then the retainage that will be withheld from this, and then we'll also be able to keep track of any retainage that we have paid. So kind of looking through the tabs on the subcontract, first we have those line items, and next we have the scope of the work. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to add in the scope of work. I'm going to speed this up again real quick. Okay, also we can go through, we can add in any inclusions. We have a database, you can add in your inclusions into a database, so you can just simply add those in here. Same with our exclusions. Just go ahead and save this, and because this invoice is actually going to need to be approved by Brant Wadsworth, we can go ahead and we can send that for approval, and that will actually send a notification to the inbox of Brant Wadsworth letting him know that he has a subcontract ready for approval. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Because I'm logged in as the administrator, I can actually come in and approve this at this time, but I'm not going to do that at this moment. Now that we have this subcontract that's already created, we can go in and we can preview it in the short form. So we have some pre-built subcontracts that are in here. You can see that it's pulling in all the information for Painting Arizona, also pulling in the scope of work here. It's pulling in the job name and all the relevant information, you know, the price of the subcontract and everything. This subcontract can then be sent out, emailed out. It can be posted on our customer portal so that the subcontractor can sign it digitally, and we will have a record of all of that. Also, we could come over here and download the subcontract form, and we'll take the preview obviously and download it into a PDF that we can email out or we can store. Once we have that and receive a signed contract back, we can also just as easily grab that. Because we have the drag and drop features, we can just take that signed PDF and we can drag it here, and that will take it and automatically attach it into the subcontract here. So you look now, we have one attachment. We can see that subcontract short form. If I were to click on it, it will open it up and show me that PDF. There we go. Took just a second. And we can approve this. And now that subcontract is ready to go. You'll notice that once it is approved, now we have an invoices button. So we can click on this and we can automatically enter in a new invoice for the subcontract. You'll notice that it pulls in all of the items, all the schedule of values that were on that subcontract, pulls in all the information. All we have to do is enter in their invoice number, their bill date, due date. Again, we do have some approval and routing processes for invoices, and we can make some adjustments to the invoice here, and we'll cover all of this in another video demonstration. Now, if we go back and look at the budget for this particular job, and we go look at the budget analysis, let's remove the division group by. Let's do a search for interior. Most of the items that we put on the subcontract were for these interior painting and wall covering. There was a couple others, but you'll notice right here the committed costs as well. Now those values from that subcontract are now in our committed cost here. So as we're receiving and invoicing, and everything that we're doing is going into this cost analysis report. I hope that this has been informative and useful for you, and I look forward to having you in our next videos.